Hi everyone, we're here to review the Anodot platform and everything, all of the menu items, the highlights, and how to use it. So I'll walk you through that today. We're going to start with the main dashboard. The highlight of the main dashboard are the month-to-date costs and the forecasted monthly costs. We have a data science team, very strong team, that is constantly working to reach as accurate forecasted monthly costs as possible. We check them all the time. The accuracy is currently at 95 to 98%, depending on the month. And we are checking, comparing to how the month ended. Apart from that, you can look around the dashboard, a few highlights, monthly trends, breakdown by region, which you will see at the bottom section. I will now move to our recommendations, which we call our waste detector. You can find it here in the left-hand menu, recommendations waste detector. We have over 60 recommendations across clouds. Here we're looking specifically at AWS. We have categorized them for you in different categories in order to facilitate the decision-making. Often things related to right sizing or generation upgrade require changes in architecture and may take more time to consider, while things that are idle, which would be in the terminate section, should be the easy wins. So if you click on one of these, it will filter the recommendations to that section. Here I can remove that filter. And when I remove it, you can see all of the recommendation types. And now one of the nice things of our recommendations, I'm going to click here on the DynamoDB idle. I will actually remove the filter to show you one more thing. At the bottom, in the bottom section, what we have is, apart from this workload right sizing, which seems to be an exception, in general, they are organized by savings. So all resources listed in one place so that you can prioritize by savings. And one of the things that are nice, I can open a specific recommendation, and I get very detailed information on the recommendation. So I don't necessarily have to be an expert in cost optimization or in the specific cloud to understand what is being recommended. So here we're getting a recommendation for an RDS instance that has not had more than one database connection in the past 7 days. Here are all of the details of the server, all resources, tags to give you a better idea. We have CLI commands for nearly every recommendation to make it easier to implement the recommendation if you would like to use it. So you would just copy paste it into the CLI command line in AWS. And here you can see the preferences that have been set. The preferences can be changed. So for example, if for RDS idle resources, meaning no database connections, 8 days is not enough for my company, I can go here to the recommendation preferences and ask that Anodot waits, for example, 30 days before generating the recommendation. And you will see preferences for every single recommendation type. If you would not like to see the recommendation at all, for example, you know in-house that you cannot upgrade the generation of servers easily, and you would not like to see the recommendation, you could just deactivate it by clicking on the right-hand toggle. When I click on the menu item above, you saw DynamoDB, for example, I click on it, it will filter to this. It will also adapt the annual potential savings. The EXSR, you can see the explanation here based on FinOps theories in the market on the expected saving rate. So we are calculating the expected saving rate. And we are always prioritizing here, sorting by savings. So if I click on terminate, it will sort by the highest savings in that section, the highest service, the highest savings per linked account, instance type. If I'm not interested, for example, in instance type, I can remove it and add a different dimension. Maybe I'm interested in tags. And here it will sort by the tag with the biggest saving. You can also filter using the top menu and change the range. So this is based on all recommendations created in the last 12 months. If you would like to say the last 30 days, you are able to do that or choose the period. And one unique thing as well of this waste detector, as you may know, many recommendations are difficult to implement or cannot be implemented, and there may be a good reason for it. So for example, a popular one is easy to right sizing. The CPU is low, the memory is working well, or both are low, but it's the production workload that cannot be touched. So what I can do here is I can exclude the recommendation. I can also snooze it. So let's say that it is the holiday period. Right now is peak season. I'm going to choose to snooze this until February 1st. I could choose an out-of-the-box explanation or write my own. Currently in high traffic season and need this as a backup for production. Reevaluate in February. I click save, and what will happen is that this line item will be removed from the potential savings, and it will be moved to the status excluded. So it will not disappear from the system. You will still have it. It is just moving to a different place. The goal here, and I recommend everyone to do this, exclude what you cannot do, add the reasons, and reach a realistic potential savings so that you actually look at the recommendations and you don't reach a scenario where people are not looking because they've decided that 90% cannot be done due to the workload conditions. The other thing you can filter by are savings. So if you would not like to see the low savings, you would like to see anything with potential savings that are above $1,000, then you could play around with this and move it so that we only display anything that has above an X amount of money. And here we have additional filters. You would like to see recommendations only for a specific tag, only for a specific instance type or region. What can also be done, and let's say that I have chosen that currently I would like to see recommendations for a specific region, for example, US East. And I know this will be a popular view. I have two options. I could save the view. So here I could create the view US East 1, check. And then the next time I log in, when I'm in that main view, I go back to the waste detector, no filters. I can always click and ask to change this view. The other thing I can do, which is popular, especially with customers who have several workloads, environments, production, test, dev, QA, the decisions may be different. You're able to add this to a dashboard. So we could create, for example, a recommendations by environment dashboard, filter to anything that is tagged prod or specific accounts which you know are prod, and save the view as prod recommendations. And then build a dashboard where you have prod recommendations, test, dev, QA. Your decision-making may be different depending on the type of results. The next thing, which is very unique of our recommendations engine, is that we are tracking actual savings. So what we do, we take a look at all of the recommendations on a daily basis, track the resources on a daily basis. So for example, and let's go back to this RDS instance item. And let's say we had a recommendation, you saw it today, and today you choose to terminate the server. We will be tracking the server on a daily basis and its recommendations, and tomorrow we no longer see the server. So we will check whether it has been terminated, and if that is the case, and we see that there is a line item recommendation, we will move it over to actual savings. And it will be tracked here. So a very good way to track your savings. It is extremely difficult to do this manually. especially when you are dealing with sometimes unattached disk savings of $5. It's $5 savings a month. When there are 100 of those, it's a $500 savings. It accumulates, and we are tracking everything here, everything that we are recommending. The other thing you can do on both the actual savings or potential is you are able to star recommendations and then filter by the star to prioritize. And you're also able to add comments and to add labels, custom labels, if you have a internal logic where you would like to prioritize, for example, high, medium, low, or prod dev. You choose what you would like to label by. And that is a review of the waste detector. We looked at the preferences, and the last part of this section is the report. You are able to send out a report if you would like to receive the list, just a high-level summary or the details once a month, once a week, you choose for everything or to filter to specific things. It can be sent out to specific email addresses, or it can be sent out to a channel. Today we support Slack, Teams, Jira, and ServiceNow. So all users can set up a channel easily through the settings section and integrate anything that can be scheduled out to one of those channels. That covers the recommendations. I will go back to the Kubernetes recommendation later on when we cover Kubernetes, and I will move on to the visibility portion. So here we have what we call the CUE, Cost and Usage Explorer, the equivalent of the cost history. Cost history in Cloud Health, Cost Explorer in AWS. There's some unique things which are comfortable. And it goes back to, again, not necessarily having to be an expert in cloud costs. We have a very user-friendly way of drilling into costs. I see, for example, I would like to understand my data transfer better. I see that it goes up and down. I'm not sure what I'm paying for. I can click on the cost. I click on that graph color, and it brings me into a detail of where it's coming from. So I see it's coming from S3. I click in, and I'm seeing mostly get objects. And my last click will bring me a very detailed breakdown by resource. So I see that most of my transfer costs are coming from this bucket. These are the tags, this is the account, and it is data transfer out to the internet. Any of the reports that you're looking at can be downloaded to a CSV, can be scheduled out, again, to email or channels, or can be saved as a dashboard. I'll take one step back now. I would like to analyze EC2. Again, it takes me through the analysis, highlights interzone in and out, which I may have missed, or I may have missed that I'm paying so much in VPC peering in. Again, I click on it, and in order to get a more detailed breakdown, and it will bring me the per resource breakdown. So here we have many resources, which is why it took a bit longer to load. And any view I would like, I do recommend that instead of building this over and over, you save it to a dashboard. You can save it either to a new or existing dashboard. And all dashboards can be seen here in the dashboard section. Here you can move from cost to usage. So here we're analyzing traffic. I can move over to bytes in order to see my trend per bytes and not by cost. And the last thing is a view of the average rate. So it's dividing the cost divided by the usage in order to see on average what I'm paying for. So we see on average my data transfer out costs are 0.09. They're the most expensive costs if we take a look at it from a rate perspective. We saw that from a cost perspective, interzone in and out was actually contributing mostly to the costs. Here I move over and I can see the interzone in and out. Up here we have the filters. Let's review what we have here. So I'm going to reset the view. I can reset it here. We have a group by service, but you can also group by linked account or any of these options. I can do a two-dimensional grouping, group by service and linked account to build a two-dimensional view. Again, I will reset this and play around with the time period, quarterly, monthly, yearly, in order to compare. And let's build a monthly view. For example, comparing September with October. In this button, I can filter, so I can filter to anything I would like here. Take into account by default, we are not showing credits or refunds, but they can be added if you choose to in the cost type section. I click on the filter to hide it. I'm not filtering to anything specific. And here I have different graph options. I'm in the stack bar, but I can move to the table. In the stack bar, which is my default, I have the option to show a number or show a cumulative view. Anyone with a significant commitment may want that cumulative view. And when I move to the table view, my options change a bit. I do have the ability to show trends. So the increase. If I'm not interested in the actual costs, I would only like the delta. I could choose to see only the trend and then group and then sort it by highest to lowest increase. The other thing I have here, which is nice, are events. So we take a look at our daily costs. And let's say that I have identified an increase. Oh, we can see a data transfer. I was not aware that most of my EC2 inter-AZ costs, most of my EC2 transfer costs are related to inter-AZ. So I could create an event and say that a data transfer costs EC2, most costs are inter-zone in, out, check internally. And I could choose that I can choose the date to be today or in the middle of the month I did this evaluation. What it will do, it will add a line here, an event line item. And I can always show it or hide it. I don't have to be in this view. Even if I'm in the default view, I ask to show events, I will still see this, and I have my notes here. And I can edit or delete at any time. Anything I've saved onto a dashboard, I can see in the dashboard section. In the dashboard section, in the three buttons to the right, you could set it as a default dashboard. So change the default dashboard so that this becomes the default. You could schedule it out as monthly, weekly, quarterly email of the dashboard. And if you would like to change the view and the sizing, then you can do that with the edit button. I could make this 100% of the page, or I could build 3 reports, each one 1/3 of the page, and play around with the order as well. And finally, clone or delete the dashboard. In the Cost and Usage Explorer, I can play around with 2 dimensions, like we saw before. For example, costs by linked account. Now let's take the scenario where I would like to see more. I would like to see my costs by service, linked account, region. I would like to have several months. That is what the assets report is for. It can be found here. I can choose the time period, for example, the previous month, and I can add to the columns as many parameters as I would like. So for example, linked account, service, region. Let's start with this. I click apply and it breaks down my costs. A popular use case scenario for this. A popular use case scenario for this is default costs by resource. So for example, you or the customer would like to understand everything you're paying for S3 by resource. So instead of having to click in the other report to get to the resource level, I can add several columns: resource, operation, linked account, usage type, quantity. Here I will also get the quantity and cost in one place. If the account is small, you may be able to see all resources in one view without having to filter. There is a limit of up to 500,000 lines. So the bigger the account, the more difficult it will be to fit all resources in one report across all services. But by filtering, we can usually fit everything. So here I see that my most expensive bucket is this one, standard storage. This was the gigabytes, and this is what I'm paying for. And it also highlights in the same page that I'm also paying for requests. My most expensive bucket in terms of requests maybe is actually a different bucket, where the storage may be cheaper, but the requests are more expensive. I can download this to a CSV. In order to download, I need to count the records first. This is checking whether we've reached 500,000 lines, and then I can download to a CSV. And I can save this as a dashboard panel or as a report. When you see report, it means schedule it out to an email. Save it as a dashboard panel. I'm saving it to a new or existing dashboard. So that is the cost visibility section. I will now move over to business mapping. Business mapping is the equivalent of virtual tagging. For those using Cloud Health today, it's the equivalent of perspectives. Very important for me to highlight, if all you would like to see are your costs by tag as tagged in AWS, there is no need to build any virtual tagging. We have here all of the tags which are written onto your COR by default. Nothing needs to be set up. When would we use business mapping? When we want to either improve the situation of tagging, clean things up, or we would like to tag things which are untagged, or we would like to group things together to build a combined view. For example, costs by owner, by department, group services together. I've had that use case. Let's group everything that's compute together. The cost of EC2 servers, RDS, OpenSearch, Elasticcache, everything that's storage, everything that is networking. And instead of seeing 100 services, we categorize them into 5 sections. You could use business mapping for that. Here I have an example of production where we are working to improve our costs by production. So here, for example, I have built out several conditions. My first condition is to grab everything that is tagged environment prod. So everything that includes prod, I would also like to combine it with everything with a capital E, environment key and prod. And now I want to grab every resource which is not tagged, but has prod in the name. So I'm asking to add any resource that contains prod. Now there are things in every cloud provider which cannot be tagged, services which are untaggable. I can also add them here. So here I added a condition where I know that CloudTrail is mostly used for production and cannot be tagged. So I'm asking the entire CloudTrail service to be grouped into production. And here I've chosen a specific resource. And here a linked account. I can go on and on and on with the different rules. I have done the same thing for non-production. And now I would like to split everything that's left. So do cost allocation. Split everything that's left into production and non-production. So I've chosen to group everything that's left. I need to choose the parameter. So my definition of this is anything that is not tagged, that is left untagged after everything that was grouped under prod and non-prod. And I'm choosing to split the cost. So I turn this button on. I choose to split it into production and non-production by ratio. You could choose a custom split as well or equally. And we have 2 types of ratio. The general ratio will take the entire time period that was chosen. For example, look at, if you chose a time range of the whole year, it will split it based on the total costs of the whole year. Or monthly, meaning it looks at every month separately. This will probably be the more accurate view. And we click save. And then we will have, and immediately you will be able to go into the cost and usage explorer and see the impact. No need to wait. So I would like to now see my costs by environment, by the business mapping environment. And I'm going to see the breakdown of prod versus non-prod, where we see that 93% has been allocated to production. And there is nothing left unallocated because I have split all unallocated costs into these two groups. That covers the section of cost allocation. I will now move over to Kubernetes. Kubernetes, the highlight here, we do need an agent in order to provide Kubernetes reporting. It is not an Anodot agent. We connect to either Prometheus or CloudWatch. We work with either one. Prometheus is the recommended one. And if you already have it in your environment, no need to install an additional agent. We connect to the existing one. That agent is allowing us to see the requested and actual usage of each pod. And through that, we are calculating the percentage of space that the pod took up in the node. So as an example, let's pretend we have a node which costs $1 an hour. Inside that node, there is a pod that has occupied 50% of the space of the node. I will assign it a cost of 50 cents for that hour. I will identify the namespaces, that its namespace, any labels, workload, and I will sum everything up. And that is how I will build the view of, for example, cost by namespace. Anything that is left not allocated is because there was no pod. Because there was no pod in that space, the node was over provisioned. There is no namespace, but for financial purposes, you are able to allocate the waste. So you're able to build all types of views, namespace by node. If you have many pods, it may take a very long time for this to load the namespace by pod, but you can play around with different views. We have many customers using this for Kubernetes cost reporting, and you are also able to see usage. So if I click on CPU, I can see what was actually used and what went to waste. So this is what was requested but was not used. For optimization purposes, we have developed a recommendation. I'm going to go to my waste detector. If you have the agent and there are opportunities for savings, you will see them in this right sizing recommendation. So to review the right sizing recommendation, there seems to be a bug, the annual potential saving, because we do see a potential saving. So let's take a look. Oh no, it's the same annual cost. Maybe it's covered by savings plans. I will take one that is not, just to show you the impact. How does it work? We are looking at every cluster separately, and within that cluster, we are looking at a specific workload. We are then evaluating the total requested CPU of that workload and memory, and comparing to what's actually happening. We are using the past 7 days in order to take the decision of what to right size. But like all recommendations, you can see the preferences at the bottom and they can be changed. You can choose for us to generate it based on data from the last 30 days. We are still displaying the data from the last 30 days, but the right sizing recommendation is generated based on the past 7 days. So we see that in the past 7 days, we have not exceeded 295 millicores of CPU. To that, we are adding a 15% buffer, which can also be changed. You could add a bigger buffer. whatever is a good fit for your company. And that is how we recommend, how we make the recommendation. In terms of memory, we see that we are at optimal allocation. It is being utilized. And this would be the new annual cost if we downsize. That covers Kubernetes. I will now move over to anomaly detection. Anomaly detection is probably one of the strongest sections of our platform. Anodot, as a company, has been in the market for over 10 years with a leading product for anomaly detection. We have a data team that are specialists in analyzing big data sets and have developed an algorithm for identifying anomalies, building a baseline, identifying anomalies. It is a different product of Anodot, which again has been in the market for over 10 years and leads in its field. And that technology has been implemented into Anodot. Looking at cloud costs, into Anodot cost, there's Anodot revenue, which is the anomaly detection technology, and Anodot cost, which is our tool for cloud costs. So that technology has been implemented here. If we take a look, what it does, it's based on the last 3 months of data. That is how it builds the baseline. That thick line is the baseline. It has learned the trends. It is building a baseline, and it expects us to be within that baseline based on the trend. As soon as we go out of the baseline, like what has happened here, it considers it an anomaly. So that orange section will be the anomaly, and it starts counting the amount of money in that anomalous period. So here we have jumped up from 200 to 496, a jump of 296. It will not stop there. As long as the trend is an anomaly, it will continue adding up the sum. And it analyzes, in order to be more accurate, we are not analyzing the total costs of the account. We are drilling in. So a specific linked account, specific service, specific region, and within that service and region, a specific usage type. So for example, for EC2, gigabytes for EBS would be analyzed separately from the trend of the hours of usage of servers. And this is done on purpose in order to create a more accurate baseline. And once we have identified an anomaly, we try to dig in further. So here I see that it's a Linux server, and I was able to extract different tags. One of the nice things of the anomaly detection system, like you will see here, even if the cost is low, it is not looking for one-time peaks only. So for example, if I create an anomaly for $50, an alert for $50, and my first day, there's an anomaly of $10, if it continues on the 5th day, I will receive an alert. So most of our customers who are using our engine, and most are no longer sitting and comparing weekly costs, week to week, month to month, where the increase was, what caused it. They catch everything within the month through the anomaly detection system and get enough details in order to investigate that minute. We display all anomalies. If you would like to receive an alert, you will need to configure an alert, choose the amount of impact in terms of dollars and percent, or only dollars. That's also okay. If you would like, you can choose specific linked accounts or services. For example, you have someone who is the owner of a specific linked account or a group of linked accounts. You could choose those. And again, it can be sent out as an email or to Slack, Teams, Jira, or ServiceNow. This would be probably one of the more practical places to connect this to a ticketing system in order to ensure action is taken. It is not just a report where the same report is being sent over and over. Into the logic of that baseline. You can add internal comments for yourself. And also for yourself, you could mark this as resolved. For example, it will not close the anomaly, but it's for you internally to know that you've reviewed it and there isn't an issue. Everything is okay. It is expected. Or acknowledged, you've reviewed it. It needs to be evaluated. So you mark it as acknowledged, knowing that you have reviewed it and there's an issue that needs to be checked. And in the magnifying glass, this will take me to the Cost and Usage Explorer. So here, for example, there's an anomaly for CloudWatch. I get a few details here, but not enough in order to know what's happening. I click on the magnifying glass. It takes me to the Cost and Usage Explorer. And one of the nice things is that in one click, I can choose resource and get a breakdown by the resource ID. And so here, a lot of fluctuations with different IDs, but one stands out, which is this prod engine logs 3. Okay, so this is one worth analyzing, and I already have the ID, the account, and the region in 2 clicks. And that is it for anomaly detection, supported on all clouds. Everything I'm showing you is supported on all clouds in Anodot. We support today AWS, GCP, and Azure. In the next section are budgets. What is unique of our budget tool? One thing that is unique is that you can create a budget based on business mapping. So I created that custom environment. I could create a budget for production based on my custom definition of production. In the budgets, what we can do is we can choose a fixed monthly budget, a planned one, taking into account, for example, 31 days versus 30, or February, which is a shorter month. You could apply a rolling budget. If my budget here is $5,000 and I have reached $4,000, 1,000 will be moved over to December. And in order to make it quicker, you're able to divide an amount over the period and then change things, or add an amount every month and then change things. Or another out-of-the-box way of using this that is not your traditional budgets is to track a commitment or to track a cost optimization effort. For example, let's say I have filtered to S3. These are my costs, and I expect a decrease of 1% per month to reach my goal of 2,600 by the end of November. So I can use that for this as well. Adding an alert is optional, but you are able to add an alert based on a specific threshold and based on forecasted or actual spend, or both. You can add one alert based on forecasted, one alert based on actual. And one of the most unique things of our budgeting tool is that it has forecasting. So most budgeting tools in the market will forecast your end of the month spend. But here we have the ability to forecast up to 6 months. So hypothetically, you could build a budget, look at the forecast, and catch an increase months before it happens, instead of waiting for that middle of the month alert, which is the 15th of the month. You're going to exceed your budget. You now only have 15 days to take care of it, which is usually not enough. So through the forecasting tool, it gives you the ability to forecast 6 months ahead of time and maybe catch something 3 months before it happens. All of these budgets can be added to dashboard, can be downloaded as a CSV as well. And finally, our last section, the last section is Cost GPT. Cost GPT is a new tool which we are constantly working on and perfecting. This is the first version. It supports cost analysis today, so cost questions. What were my costs by service for June 2024 versus July 2024? I don't have to go into here, into the cost and usage, build 2 months, turn it into a table, compare. This is doing it for me. And now I can just download the results. So costs is one use case scenario. It also has coverage. What is my coverage by service? Very nice breakdown per service on what is covered, what is on demand, what are our savings. And it also has forecasting. What are my forecasted total costs for the next, say, 6 months? Here we have the coverage one. And then finally, a very important thing to highlight, there is a small question mark box here. Everything that I've explained today has very detailed documentation. At any point, you can click on it, click on useful resources, documentation homepage. And here we have all of our documentation. A popular place to look at is the recommendations, very detailed explanations for each recommendation. And that is it. We have reviewed everything. We hope you enjoy the tool. Julia, that's